Ever wanted a Corvette in your life, but you need room for kids and the like? This might scratch the itch. Introducing the Chevy SS, or the VFII Commodore SSV Redline, as us Aussies down under call it. Now, this car has what we call the Holy Trinity, and no, I'm not talking about an HSP. I'm talking V8, rear wheel drive and manual in the sedan. Outside the likes of an E90 M3 and a CT5V Blackwing, where else are you getting this type of car? Whilst us Aussies of course have a plethora of dirty V8s to choose from, you couldn't buy a brand new V8 manual sedan between 2009 to 2014, as Pontiac had gotten the good old axe with the G8 going under as well. So, whilst you've probably seen car journos like Jason Camissa absolutely rip on the Chevy SS like no tomorrow, we're gonna review this car differently by conducting what we call an automotive X-ray to gauge why this car deserves a seat at the table with the greats. Each section of this video has been painstakingly divided into the various mechanical parts of the car, such as the engine, gearbox, dynamics, suspension, and of course, the chassis and underbody. With that being said, let's begin. To kickstart this technical review, let's look at the iconic power plant that powers both the C6 Grand Sport and of course, the Chevy SS. A fire-breathing NA 6.2 litre V8 known as the LS3. In the Chevy SS, this produces 415 horsepower at 5900 RPM and 563 Nm at 4600 RPM. Unfortunately for us Aussies, power has been slightly downrated in the LS3 version of the VFII SSV Redline to 408 horsepower at 6000 RPM, but you do get more torque with 570 Nm at 4400 RPM. We think the Aussies have kept a slightly torquier LS3 variant, which has more than 200 RPMs lower, as carrying heavy items around in utes is more common down under. But the C6 Grand Sport's got a few more horses up its sleeve, with 430 horsepower at 5900 RPM and 575 Nm at 4600 RPM. Now we've tattled off a few facts and figures off our tongue. Let's figure out why the LS3 is such an iconic power plant. This is an oversquare engine with a 103.25mm bore and 92mm stroke, so it's all about the top end rather than pure torque like a diesel. Despite the LS3 having a lower compression ratio of 10.7 to 1 compared to the LS2's 10.9 to 1, changes like the bigger bore which give the LS3 a bigger displacement at 6.2 litres compared to the LS2's 6 litres, higher flowing cylinder heads sourced from the L92, and a high flow intake manifold all contribute to an extra 15 horsepower and 21 Nm of torque. Well, that was anticlimactic. You'd think with all of these changes, the LS3 would have 100 more horsepower. But there are two big benefits to the LS3 over the LS2, outside of factory crank horsepower, ease to add more power, and of course durability, with that extra 200cc and better cylinder heads helping to reduce wear on the engine. Let's dive deeper into those two last components we just listed, starting with the cylinder heads. Before we go with the what, we have to ask ourselves, why do we need good cylinder heads? One simple reason: horsepower. The more air you can flow into the engine, the more power you can produce. And in the case of these cylinder heads, which use as cast ports and chambers, a maximum valve lift airflow of more than 168 grams per second for the inlet ports and more than 123 grams per second in the exhaust ports has been achieved. To throw this into context, at the time the LS3 dropped, no small blockhead in production flowed as much air as the LS3's intake and exhaust ports. Next up, the intake manifold. GM engineers have designed the LS3 intake manifold to have a precise balance of extremely low air flow losses, good cylinder to cylinder flow balance, and optimum runner length for engine tuning. At peak valve lifts, the LS3 manifold flows more than 155 grams per second. Now, one of the coolest things about the LS3 manifold is that it contains 89% of the flow capacity of the LS7 manifold. Considering the LS7 makes an extra 800cc and as a result 70 extra horsepower, that's pretty crazy. So what do all of these changes mean? Compared to the LS2 and a lot of other engines, adding power is now much cheaper and easier. This is also due to that change in the throttle body, which has been switched from the silver blade LS2 throttle body to a gold blade that rotates opposite of the initial silver blade. For instance, all you need to push a 450 rear wheel horsepower is a basic cam kit and a pair of headers, whilst for an LS2, you need way more than those parts, ranging from cams, throttle body, intake, etc. And if you want to go with forced induction, the LS3 is even better as it uses thicker sleeves than the LS2. With all that practical mumbo jumbo for you power nerds out of the way, let's do a pull on Surfer's Paradise again with the coveted Chevy SS. You might be asking, how on earth does the Chevy SS sound this good? Well, the camshaft is what sets the personality of the LS3. It almost has a Jekyll Hyde character to it, where when you're cruising around like we are now, the cam design runs smoothly and efficiently. It feels properly torquey too. And then, when that fire-breathing V8 comes alive, the intake side specs of 0.55 inch lift and 204 degree duration and 0.050 inch give the LS3 the air it needs all the way up to Redline. And one of the reasons why this engine, when left unmodified, is still absolutely bulletproof at 300,000 Ks is as Chevy have worked to minimize the velocity of the valve within that camshaft right before it closes against the seat in their head, and the height of the valve bounces right after it closes. To add to the dual personality of this car, Holden introduced in the VFII Redline, and later on so did Chevy with the 2016 SS, a dual mode exhaust system with quad exhaust tips and functional hood vents. The dual mode exhaust uses vacuum actuated outlet valves, which control engine noise during low RPMs but open for maximum performance during high RPMs. This is similar to the C606, but uses a 2.5 inch diameter exhaust compared to the Z06's 3 inch. Unfortunately, this exhaust system in the SS and Redline did not come with a power upgrade to 436 horsepower and 580 Nm that the C6 Grand Sport got. They also miss out on the C6 Grand Sport manual's dry sump oiling system, which is similar to the one fitted on the C6 Z06 with the LS7. Instead, you just have a conventional wet sump oiling system. And with that, let's look at one of the reasons why the Chevy SS handles better than the Pontiac G8, or rather, the VE Commodore. By constructing the engine block entirely from aluminium rather than iron, GM saved £100 compared to other iron block engines, and this means less weight on the front, so you get a more balanced weight distribution. This is why loads of reviewers have been pleasantly surprised by how these cars master their weight in the canyons, despite weighing just over 4,000 pounds. So we have that glorious LS3, but we need something so it operates at its best at any speed. So let's now talk about the transmissions. The 6-speed manual gearbox in this car is quite special. So special that Cadillac decided to use it in their CT4V and CT5V Blackwings, both of which you can get off a showroom floor fresh. It's a Tremec TR6060 unit, which is very durable and has stood the test of time. Not only from their new single piece countershaft, but also from using forward helical gears, as they have a higher number of teeth, which means less load is placed on each tooth. If you're looking to swap a brand new TR6060 and it doesn't quite fit into your car, consider the Tremec Magnum, which is basically the aftermarket version of this gearbox, and it was developed to attach to the engine side bolt patterns for a variety of applications, ranging from hot rods to resto mods. Before we touch on to why the 6-speed GM 6L80 torque converter auto isn't quite as special as the manual through some brief gear ratio analysis, there are two minor but important facts we need to get out of the way. If you want a manual, don't buy a 2014 Chevy SS, as they only came in auto that year, and the shifter on the autos is better isolated to reduce NVH from the motor. If we look at the gear ratios between the manual and the auto, we can see that the manual's gear ratios are much more closely spaced together, and the final drive of 3.7 compared to the auto's taller 3.27 makes this acceleration feel tighter, meaning you actually get to roll through the gears without losing a license. This is evidenced by Motor Trend's 0 to 60 mph test, which found that the SS manual's 4.5 second time was a tenth quicker than the SS autos, and it was also faster than the quarter mile by a tenth, finishing it in 12.9 seconds with a faster trap speed of 110.8 miles per hour. Not only is the TR6060 better for racing, but it's also better for the highway. With a taller 6th gear, and as a result at 70 miles per hour, the manual is happier and more relaxed, sitting at a lower 1875 RPM compared to the auto's 1950 RPM. But it's not all doom and gloom for the auto, as you can hit first gear from a dig earlier at 39 miles per hour compared to the manual's 46 miles per hour. Let's now move on to another aspect of what makes this car so special, the dynamics. Let's start off with the steering. Unfortunately, Holden ditched the hydraulic setup that was on the VE for an electric power steering setup, which lacks feedback and communication about the road textures and lateral grip limits, despite using the VFII tune, which decreases the steering ratio for quick turning response. The Chevy SS or Holden VFII Redline also comes with pretty big brakes, which at the front are vented rotors that are 355mm with 4-piston, 2-piece aluminium calipers attached, and at the rear are vented rotors that are 324mm by 22mm vented rotors with single piston aluminium calipers attached. For the 2016 facelift and the VFII Redline, these calipers are painted red. Whilst these brakes may sound like high performance, these are adequate rather than world beating, as you've got to remember this car's typically scales at just under 4,000 pounds. For the wheels, they're 19 by 8.5 at the front and 19 by 9 at the rear, and whilst they were forged aluminium for 2014 to 15, they were updated to a cast aluminium design for 2016 to 17. Another important thing to note is the front and rear tyres being different sizes, with 245/40 R19 ultra high performance at the front and 275/35 R19 ultra high performance at the rear. This is a staggered wheel and tyre setup, and in powerful rear wheel drive setups, these setups are almost always used, as wider rear tyres help put that power down more effectively. To put the power down without spinning the wheels like crazy, Chevy has used a clutch pack cell rear LSD to provide a strong locking effect when there is a difference in torque between the left and right wheels. Let's now move on to the quads and hammies of the SS, the suspension. Simply put, the SS or VFII Redline uses the McPherson strut front suspension and a multi-link rear setup, and compared to the normal VFII SS, the Redline with the VFII tune actually gets larger front and rear stabilizer bars. Unfortunately for us Aussies, we didn't get the special MagneRide technology that some of the HSVs got. That good stuff was only available for the Chevy SS from 2015 onwards. In layman's terms, what MagneRide does is adjust the dampers every 1,000th of a second to adapt to changing road conditions or the way the car is being driven. How this is done is through the monotube dampers being filled with magnetorheological fluid, and these dampers contain two electromagnets which create a magnetic field that makes the suspension stiffer if the sensors with the dampers sense any body roll. And Motor Trend's review of the SS definitely echoed this, praising its surprising lack of body roll for a 4,000 pound par, as well as its luxury car smooth ride quality. About the spring rates, they are 143 pound-inch for the front and 331 pound-inch for the rear, so they're not as stiff as you would expect a rear-wheel drive sports sedan to be. There were two changes that Holden had to make to the suspension to fit the new EPS. The first being to reprofile the front suspension member by installing double coat coil springs to allow a thinner wire for reduced weight. The second change was to replace the linear control arms, which were steel castings welded to the tube, with light alloy ones to remove unsprung weight. With all that suspension mumbo jumbo out of the way, let's now delve deep into arguably the crowning achievement of the VF Commodore, the chassis and underbody. For this section, we're gonna cover it in two parts: the aerodynamics / chassis and the weight itself, since that was a massive focus of the VF Commodore, with Vehicle Systems Manager Andrew Holmes citing that for the first time ever, weight saving became obsessive and every engineer designing a new part was told it had to weigh less than the old one. Starting off with the aero, the drag coefficient has been improved by 7% to 0.31 over the VE Commodore's 0.33, and one of the ways they achieved this was through an aluminium boot spoiler design that provides a laminar airflow, breaking the air over the tail of the car and preventing drag as a result. Holden's main focus here was function over form, with the ridge where the body runs around the taillights even serving an aero purpose, as well as the shaved side wheel arches. The rear splitter is also functional in smoothing flow under the car and reducing lift and drag. Many hours are actually spent at Monash University's wind tunnel to muck around with different fillet and opening configs to get the best result. Let's now touch on the great, but not world class, we benchmark this against the likes of the F8XM cars, chassis this car has. Whilst the VE and VF are based on the same GMZ platform, which was benchmarked against the late E39 M5, the VF uses a much stiffer chassis thanks to greater use of medium to high strength steels, which resulted in 30 pounds shaved off the core structure. The slimmer but stronger A-pillars, the perimeter cross brace across the front of the roof, and the front body module horns incorporating cross member mounts are now ultra high strength steel instead of just high strength, and this is done through hot stamping of chassis components. And to provide a more luxurious driving experience on the highway, the VF Commodore uses a new aircon plenum and acoustic wheel housings to reduce wet and dirt road noise by absorbing impacts and ambient noise between compartments more quietly. So, the weight then. 4,000 pounds sounds heavy, yes, but for a full-size car with a V8, not horrible. First off, the SSV Redline sedan manual tips the scales at 1,766 kilos, with the auto at 1,780 kilos. With this focus on weight reduction, similar to the Graham strategy which was adopted to engineer the ND MX-5, Holden engineers were able to shave a massive 72.5 kilos from the chassis alone. One of the changes included switching to a lightweight aluminium bonnet so that you only needed a single gas strut to open it, not two as before with the VE. Lightening the boot lid to aluminium means the lid can now open automatically instead of needing to be lifted, and these two changes shave 10 kilos off. The fenders are also aluminium, as well as the front lower control arms and knuckles, which save 6 kilos on each corner. The body in white, which is where a car's body structure is assembled before painting, has gone down by 12.5 kilos as well. In addition to beefing up the body structure, engineers could then reduce the thickness of the door skins to further push weight reduction, meaning that the VF Commodore at its core is 75 kilos lighter than the VE. And to put all this to the test, before dropping into showrooms, 3.2 million kilometers were covered across Australia and in Arizona, Detroit, Sweden, Canada, 2 locations in Spain and Germany. And with that, let's head into the concluding remarks. Overall, what are my thoughts on the Chevy SS? As an Ultimate Daily, it's right up there on my all-time list, especially as an Aussie. Unfortunately, we don't get right-hand drive Corvettes in the used market for 30k USD, so this is a great option whilst carrying the family for road trips. But the biggest flaw of the VF2 Redline in Australia is the result of its biggest strengths. When you have a car this good, you have the man, and so many of these are getting stolen as they are quite easy to carjack. So that's something to keep in mind if you're looking to get your mutts on one. Thanks again to everyone for tuning in and leaving kind words and incredibly helpful advice in the comments to help improve our automotive x-rays. Let us know what cars you want us to do next, and I'll see you in a bit.